Happy Friday, everyone. Kylen Mills and I have your Friday Night Live action next. We're going to recap a day of insanity for the Golden State Warriors. Let's get to it. This is Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. And Kylen Mills is guaranteed to at least read your content if you engage with her on social media. I actually shouldn't guarantee that, but you can follow Kylen Mills on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram at Kylen Mills. You can follow me, Cyrus Saatsaz, on Twitter at DogSurfRoadshow. Kylen, it is great to see you. My throat is legit coarse from all the stuff I did yesterday. I'm exhausted. I would love for you to take over and share with the world your thoughts on the Warriors trading for Chris Paul. And I guess we can save the draft picks later. Let's start with Chris Paul. What's your reaction to that? Great to see you.
Good to see you, Cyrus. There's so much to break down. This is honestly just like, I don't even know. Yesterday was such a blockbuster day for the Warriors. My head is spinning because going into draft day, based on the inactivity, you and I both talked about the Warriors being lame ducks. Would that be the right phrasing? Lame ducks, sitting ducks? I don't know. Whatever the phrase is.
Sitting ducks. I think sitting ducks. Yeah.
Sitting ducks, is that what it is? Yep. Okay. All right.
Well, I'm still waiting to hear what you're referring to, but I'm guessing sitting ducks. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, yeah, no, I was under the impression, or at least like just based on their lack of activity, it seemed like it wasn't a good sign. There wasn't going to be a lot of movement for the Warriors. The Jordan Poole, Chris Paul trade is not one that I had on my bingo card. I don't know about you, but that definitely caught me by surprise. And you and I here on the show have been looking at all different types of players and contracts that would be comparable with the Jordan Poole trade. To me, Poole going somewhere wasn't entirely a huge shock. Mm-hmm. It would have definitely not been a shock had Mike Dunleavy Jr. not said 2 days ago that Jordan Poole is going to be staying with the organization for the next couple of years and that they had no plans to part with him anytime soon. 4 years. Yeah. So just want to keep that in mind for folks. Like, that's still kind of mind-boggling to me that Dunleavy Jr. in his first official press conference as GM was very adamant that the Warriors weren't going to let go of Jordan Poole. And then 2 days later, see ya, bye, Jordan. So there you have it. So that's the only reason why I was a little surprised, is just because we just heard Dunleavy say the opposite of what happened. And then I was surprised the Warriors made a move for Chris Paul. Based on all the players and contracts who were comparable, that's not one that I had circled. Positives of Chris Paul in terms of on the basketball court. To me, it's going to be a major upgrade in terms of that late game execution that Jordan Poole has had problems with.
Yeah.
Now, you're looking at a reliable point guard. He's not a backup point guard, that is, who can play behind Steph, that isn't a high turnover guy, and who does have the experience, the veteran leadership, and can close out games. Versus Jordan Poole, we saw it throughout the season, struggled in late game situations, turnovers, sloppy play, bad shot selection. It was a big crutch for the Warriors because he continually played late in games and continually seemed to just make bad decisions. So you're bringing in a player, to me, that I feel like come April, come May of next year, in some of those crunch situations, you're going to see an upgrade from Jordan Poole. Now, that also comes with the negative, and the big negative is simply the age. Now, Chris Paul just turned 38 years old. I mean, how much does he have left in the tank at this point? And not saying anything against him, it's just 38 years old. You're coming towards the end of your career here. So that's the one downside, or the biggest downside to me of this trade, is the fact that you're giving up a young, talented player in Jordan Poole, who I still believe in can make it in this league. That's one thing that I know some fans are split about. He certainly had some flaws. They were exposed quite a bit this past season in terms of some of the turnovers, decision-making I just mentioned, shot selection, a lot of different factors. But I still think he's a player that does have a high upside and still has opportunity to grow within the league. He's 23 years old and still could potentially become a star. And we've already seen him put up big numbers. What were his final averages this year? So I don't remember, but he averages well over 20 points a game.
Who, Jordan Poole?
Yeah.
Yeah, correct. 20. It was like 20.4, I think.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Over 20 points a game. So he's a player who could score the basketball, and at his peak, we could see him, be able to score in a lot of different ways, similar to his Steph. When JP3 is on, hitting 3-pointers, getting to the basket, using his explosive step, he was really fun to watch. The problem was the bad defense and then also the late game execution for me. But he's a player that, to me, like, I just don't enjoy seeing the Warriors ship off and give up on, because I still think he could have a bright future. And we're looking at a Warriors organization that's trying to build a little bit for the future while also trying to win a title now, which is some of the struggles they dealt with this past season. We're trying to find that balance and strike that balance between chasing a current championship, but also not leaving this team in total rebuild mode once Steph, Clay, and Dre retire, because that day isn't that far off. Where does that leave the Warriors? Who are the young, talented guys that you're molding on your roster right now? And to me, the writing initially was on the wall when we saw Jordan Poole make this huge jump 2 seasons ago, that he was a guy they were going to hold on to and that could really be a key part in the future of this organization. So that's the thing. The only thing to me is, where does this leave the Warriors 2 years, 3 years, 4 years down the line? I don't know that they're better off, but I do see next year this making a lot of sense. And there's also the money factor. To me, this move, in addition to the PBJ being shipped out in exchange for the draft pick that turned into Trayce Jackson-Davis, that was a money move. These are both money moves. Now, can you explain a little bit more about what the savings would be with Chris Paul? Because we were just talking before we went on about how that would work out based on his contract, the fact that he's non-guaranteed. And then Jordan Poole, we know, still had a couple of years and big dollar amounts coming his way. So do you know a little bit more about that?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to first agree with Chris Alito Villanueva, who says Chris Paul setting up a pick and roll with Kuminga is way better than Jordan Poole just shooting from half court. Agreed. Yeah. And that's one of the many positives of Chris Paul coming here is, first of all, it's weird. He's never in his entire NBA career come off the bench. Props to Connor Letourneau for pointing that stat out. That means, like, even his rookie year, from the beginning until now, he has never, not one game, has he come off the bench in a very long career. So that part's kind of weird. I'm curious to know if he's going to be okay assimilating to that. But I love the fact that you now have a future Hall of Famer anchoring your second unit, provided he's okay with that, leading these young players. The money saved, I honestly didn't really think about that in terms of Patrick Baldwin Jr. being traded for Trayce Jackson-Davis. How much money do they save? It's like $1 million. Is it like,
so the actual salary difference was somewhere? So Trayce Jackson-Davis is expected to be signed to close to like what the minimum is, which is $1 million. And PBJ would have been getting 2.3 million. So at face value, the salary amount around 1.23, somewhere in that range, doesn't look like a lot, but it results in $10 million in luxury tax. And that's the problem, is that the Warriors are so far into the luxury tax that every $1 million, now I say $1 million is a lot, but I'm talking in terms of the grand scheme of NBA team salary. So, take that as you will. But it's the salary tax that's adding up for the Warriors right now. And every $1 million is times 10 because of just how far into the tax and how big the Warriors salary is in terms of the entire team. So that's where a little can go a long way in cutting that budget. And that also is going to have some long-term implications when the Warriors start to have these discussions about trying to re-sign Draymond Green. And then you also look at Klay Thompson and what his future might hold after his contract is up after another year. So that's the predicament the Warriors are in, trying to keep any of the talented players they have, trying to re-sign the core. If they were to extend them a little bit longer until those guys are ready to retire, they're going to have to come up with the money somewhere. Yeah. So even that, difference in salary between those two guys results in $10 million of tax savings.
You're right. That is correct. When we come back, I'm going to explain to everyone why the Chris Paul move is actually a considerable positive. And look, I never thought of the PBJ trade as a cost saving measure. I mean, I don't doubt that you're correct that there, that maybe that played a part, but there's a bigger thing at play here. And it took me until this morning to wake up and it just kind of like hit me why the Warriors traded not just Patrick Baldwin Jr., but Ryan Rollins. I mean, they basically wiped out their entire draft from a year ago. Guy Santos, the only player remaining. But there is a good reason for that. It actually is a positive. I'm going to explain all that, the money saving, and we'll delve into so much more after we give some love to a men's clothing brand called Bird Dogs. It's all about comfort and style, a combination with Bird Dogs. I love their shorts. That's what I'm styling. And again, it's all about being comfortable. So, we came out of a pandemic where all of us suddenly got used to wearing pajamas. And now we're supposed to wear regular clothes again. Well, Bird Dogs lets you maintain that comfort, but not look like a total bum when you're walking down the streets. You can look good and feel good. And they also include this awesome tumbler. It's a free Yeti style tumbler with your order. So go to birddogs.com/lockedonnba for that free Yeti style tumbler and to order clothes that, again, look good, but maybe more importantly, makes you feel good. It's super comfortable. That's birddogs.com/lockedonnba for a free Yeti style tumbler. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. Everydayers, follow us on Twitter at Locked On Dubs. It's where we announce the times of our shows we have coming up as a guest. Next week, I'm actually going to have someone on the show. I forgot his name. I'm feeling really bad about it. But who
Cyrus.
I just booked this. I don't know. I feel bad. If I look it up, I'll get it. I'm going to look it up right now, actually, because I feel awful. But he's the closest thing to an expert on Brandin Podziemski, because I want someone on the show who, his name is Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you to me and you, Kylen, for pushing me to do that. Spencer McLaughlin will be on the show next week. He's a former broadcaster for Santa Clara. He covers college athletics. He's watched Brandin more than most, maybe more than everyone who hasn't been involved as a coach. Because the Santa Clara Broncos don't have like a beat reporter. They don't have anyone who covers the team extensively. So Spencer's going to come on next week, maybe for a segment, maybe for a whole show, to tell us what the Warriors are getting in Brandin Podziemski. Now, and again, first of all, follow Kylen Mills on all social media platforms at Kylen Mills. Super easy. Here's the positives of Chris Paul. They don't save money this year. He's going to make more than what Poole made. So you're actually paying more this year, but you're saving approximately $100 million over the next 3 years, which is a lot of money. I mean, Jordan Poole's contract was egregious. 4 years, $127 million. It's either 123 or 27. I always forgot. That's a lot of money that the Warriors just got away from. And now that's the Wizards' problem. So you don't have to worry about the money after this year. But what Chris Paul gives you, besides the fact that he's the backup point guard Steve Kerr has wanted for years, the Warriors, for some weird reason, have been pursuing like veteran, older point guards over the past 2-3 years, whether it was Goran Dragic, whether it was Patty Mills, whether it was Patrick Beverly, and they struck out every time. They couldn't get that old school point guard. They finally got it. Now, why Kerr wants this so bad, we'll find out. Why Chris Paul was targeted, given he's never played in an offense that even closely resembles what Steve Kerr runs with the motion. He is an old school pick and roll point guard. So I guess Steve Kerr can't suck it up. I have no idea how this is going to work out, but regardless, he fits that role. So if you have faith in Steve Kerr, roll with this, because this is who Steve Kerr wants. He gives you defense. He gives you mid-range shooting, which the team has sorely lacked. That was, in fact, one of the biggest things Klay Thompson regressed in this year. While he led the NBA in three-pointers made, he was also horrible in terms of two-point field goals, in terms of close-range shots. Chris Paul is incredibly efficient as a mid-range shooter, so you get that. But here's maybe what's most important. The Warriors are officially all in, and I'm not breaking any news saying that, right? They're officially going to go for a 5th title in 10 years this upcoming season. What Chris Paul can do for you is recruit free agents. He is a very popular figure in the NBA. If Chris Paul is what gets you, big star players, maybe not stars, but at least very valuable players who maybe might make more somewhere else, because the Warriors don't even have the mid-level anymore. He might be a difference maker there. The other huge perk we talked about before we started recording, Kylen, Chris Paul's salary next season, which is a team option for $30 million. And our friend Larry Kruger was the first to point this out, which is very true. If the Warriors decide they want another key asset next year, they can opt into Chris Paul's $30 million contract and then trade him to get an asset back, because he's an expiring deal. And that's suddenly a move that you did not previously have next season, that now you have. And if you decide you want to move on, you just don't sign that option and it's over. That's $30 million. So that primarily is the reasoning for Chris Paul. I kind of like it. There was a report today that came out that the Warriors were also talking with the Celtics, which I imagine was a trade that would have involved Marcus Smart. I would have much preferred Marcus Smart. That actually killed me hearing that, because you're younger, you're getting a better defender. You might be getting the next Draymond, because they're both very similar in their defensive intensity. But Chris Paul is who they get. Doesn't answer the size issue, but at least they now have a veteran who can score, who can lead the second unit, and who hopefully can help them get other veterans now to come on board. Before we move on from Chris Paul, any last thoughts, Kylen, or anything you want to add?
I mean, here, like I said, I think that Chris Paul could help majorly in the short term when you look at this upcoming season specifically. I mean, I stand by what I said, that I feel like having him as your backup point could pay dividends come the postseason, come those crunch time situations. Chris Paul is top 20 all time in fourth quarter points amongst NBA players. Yeah, I looked that up yesterday because it's something that stuck out to me, is that he is pretty efficient in the fourth quarter. And that's where I feel like, to me, the upgrade stands out, because we saw Jordan Poole fall apart late in games so often this past season. He's young. He's still gaining some maturity. I'm not trying to knock him for that, but I'm just saying that's one of his downfalls and one of his struggles. And now you're looking at bringing in that experienced veteran who the team can look to and can step up in fourth quarter situations. And a lot of the Warriors' losses this last season were lost in the fourth quarter, lost in those late game situations. So, you turn around a couple more of those wins, he could be an impact player. I guess I'm just curious to see how this plays out for the Warriors long term, because to me, it just seems like there still is an issue with developing young talent. I'm glad that it appears Jonathan Kuminga is staying around. I'm really happy about that, because he's another young player that I think that could, really develop here. But I don't know. It was just kind of interesting. Like you said, they shipped off their entire draft class from last season. Jordan Poole is this young player that the Warriors seem to be really invested in. He's gone last season. James Wiseman, another player that Bob Myers preached, we really believe in. We're developing him. We believe he can be the future. He's gone. So I guess that's the only other thing to me. The Paul trade just leaves a little bit of question marks after seeing Jordan Poole leave. I don't hate trading Jordan Poole by any means, but it just felt like, a lot of these young players have come and gone. And, where does that leave the Warriors? A couple other players, I'm trying to remember, who they drafted and dished very quickly as well. Like, what's his name? Alan Smilajic or whatever. It's Eric Pascal. I don't know. Yes, exactly. Eric Pascal. So I look back at a couple of these draft picks recently. Well, dude, he was here so quickly. Like, he was here and gone. So, I guess it's just, I would like to see the Warriors really try to invest in developing these young players. I'm glad they haven't given up on Jonathan Kuminga, but he's going to need playing time. He's going to need, some coaching, and same with Moses Moody. So I hope we see some changes in terms of Steve Kerr's approach, in addition to these two rookies who've now been added to the mix, that we actually get to see them play and make an impact. And that's something that we heard from Mike Dunleavy Jr. is that these are going to be guys in the rotation. He, unlike Ryan Rollins, who was pretty much relegated to the G League this season, Trayce Jackson-Davis is expected to be on that 15-man roster and to be a big factor in it as well, like actually being involved. Like, that's one really huge thing. I know we're about to get into them, so I guess I'll lead you right into it. But, that's one big thing that I took away from Dunleavy speaking, was that these guys are going to have a chance to play. At least that's how I made it sound. Sorry. So you can go ahead and take
you mean the rookies playing?
The rookies, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, when we come back, we'll delve into that. I want to say one last point on Chris Paul in terms of a positive for him being on the Warriors. There was a very strong possibility that the Warriors were going to trade a Jordan Poole for nothing, and just shed that salary. Like that possibility really existed. So just the fact that they got an asset back, and just the fact that they are focused on winning a title this year is a positive. And again, whether or not you like the addition of Chris Paul remains to be seen. I'm going to play this soundbite though from Mike Dunleavy Jr. Then we'll take a break and then come back and talk about these rookies because you're right. On one hand, I thought I heard something too about Dunleavy saying that the rookies were going to come in and play right away. But then we have this soundbite from Mike Dunleavy. This was last night in a brief press conference following the draft.
Having been around the league a long time and taken from personal experience, I would never draft anybody expecting them to play right away. I just think coming into as a rookie in the NBA, there's too many challenges. There's too much going on. If you can find a way to play, great. It's gravy on top. But I really don't care if you're 19, 21, 25. there's an amazing adjustment that has to take place. Everybody does it at their own speed. So we're going to bring these guys along. We're going to develop them. If they can play right away, great. But as far as we're concerned, no expectation in year one. It's unrealistic. And, if they do end up playing well, then it's a bonus.
What do you see Brandin's developmental path with the Warriors? Do you see him as a guy that might be able to rely on him for 10 minutes on a night?
Yeah, I think as far as his path goes, like I said before, I think you got to always temper expectations for rookies coming in. But this dude is so competitive. He's got so much fire that, I wouldn't sell him short on what he can do. Come up and tell him, don't plan on playing much your rookie year. I know he's going to challenge me and anybody else who would say that. So I'm looking forward to watching him and seeing how he grows. But he's got a really high skill level. And when you have a really high skill level, a willingness to compete, toughness, you got a chance.
And when we come back, we're going to talk about those comments and those comments are important. I do agree with him that I don't think outside of maybe Trayce Jackson-Davis, just because he's 23, he played 4 years in college, I could say, and his skill set is something that isn't overly complicated to advance and apply to the modern game. So maybe we might see him. Podziemski might be more of a long-term type player. But regardless, we'll talk about that and so much more because we got a couple ad clients here, sponsors here to give love to. And the first one is Game Time. Kylen, when's the last time you went to a concert? Do you remember? Because it's been a long time for me. Do you remember when the last time was?
It's been forever. And actually, Charlie and I were just looking at wanting to go to a concert. We're doing a trip back to Chicago in the summer. And we were trying to find one to go to. Maybe Alicia Keys. Alicia Keys is going to be in town when we're there. She's a great singer. I like some of her songs. Anyway, so it's been a long time.
Yeah.
I'm trying to go this summer. So tell me how to get tickets, Cyrus.
Well, good luck with that. And look, it is summer. It's concert season. You might also want to go to a baseball game. You might want to go to the theater. That's year round. Whatever it is. And you want to buy these tickets last minute. You don't feel like planning months in advance. Game Time is the app for you. It's all about finding tickets last minute. And one of the best parts is they offer a low price guarantee, meaning if you buy a ticket and then you find another ticket in the same row, in the same section for less, they will credit you 110% of the difference. That is literally a low price guarantee. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Oh, we have another sponsor, and that's Prize Picks. We're rolling in sponsors today. Prize Picks is super fun, in my humble opinion, for the simple reason that you're betting all about overs and unders and on individuals. It's legal in California. Kylen, is the World Cup coming up, by the way? Because I'm seeing all this hype, but I'm so out of touch with a lot of current events. Like, is the World Cup upcoming?
Yes, Cyrus. Good thing you have me. I'm the soccer guru here.
Yes,
the World Cup, the Women's World Cup is starting in late July. I believe day one is July 20th. But yes, it'll be played from mid to late July through mid to late August.
Okay, because I keep seeing that Adidas commercial like every 5 minutes of Patrick Mahomes and the basketball players, football players, and I keep going like, why is this running every 2 seconds? All right, so the World Cup is coming up. You can bet on the World Cup and individuals there as well. That's the whole reason why I asked. So if you're a soccer aficionado, if you're a baseball aficionado, whatever the sport is, Prize Picks is where you could have a ton of fun. You can win a lot of money, 2 to 6 players. You're betting over unders, and you can win a ton of cash. Download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 if you use the promo code Locked On. Whatever money you put in, up to $100, they will match it. So you're playing with double what you put in. But don't forget to enter the promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match of up to $100.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
For making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. You can follow Kylen Mills on all social media platforms at Kylen Mills as we wrap the show up. All right, so here's what I'm seeing with the draft. And because you're right, the Warriors move on from draft picks fast, right? With Patrick Baldwin Jr., nice knowing you for a year. Ryan Rollins, nice knowing you. James Wiseman, nice knowing you. Eric Pascal, nice knowing you. Nico Mannion. I mean, the list goes on and on. They move on very fast. I feel like they're experts at breaking up with people. They're good at it. But in this case, what I'm seeing with these decisions is that they're going absolutely all in. And what they're essentially doing with trading their rookies from a year ago is replacing them with veterans that they have yet to sign to fill out the roster. What I mean by that is if they had kept Patrick Baldwin Jr., if they kept Ryan Rollins, these are two players that you would have been counting on as your bench. And these are young, unproven players. By moving on from them, by drafting two brand new rookies, you no longer feel any obligation to rely on them. You're not going to get complaining from them. They're going to be just sitting there studious, understanding that they're rookies and that playing time does not typically go to rookies unless your name is Keegan Murray or Christian Brown or a lot of other players. I mean, some rookies do play, but regardless, that's the reality of it. So the Warriors are all in. Again, next week, I want to get more into one of the rookies, Brandin Podziemski. What was your thoughts on that, Kylen? Like, did you like that pick? I wasn't like blown away. I mean, Dunleavy loves him. Your thoughts on Brandin Podziemski?
I thought it was an interesting pick. I mean, I like Podziemski. He played well for Santa Clara, and we've seen successful players come out of Santa Clara. Hint, hint, Jalen Williams. So, don't knock the West Coast Conference or playing in the mid-major level first. So just want to throw that out there. But, I mean, I like him. He's a good player. He's a good shooter. I don't know that he like super excited me in terms of like being able to impact the Warriors right now. And I know that's something that you also mentioned a minute ago, Cyrus. So like, I'm kind of on the same page about that, but I will say what stood out to me about Podziemski was actually his comments after being drafted. I don't know if you heard any of that or played that on the show last night, Cyrus, but that he said afterwards that he sees himself being a triple-double guy in the NBA because he can rebound, he can be a playmaker, he can hit shots. And he sounded very confident, very fired up, and super competitive. And the other thing is that he did work out with the Warriors back on May 31st, and he impressed the entire front office, the coaching staff, with what he showed in the gym. So you got to believe they saw something special in that workout situation. So, like I don't hate it.
Did.
I don't hate it. I don't love it. Like I said, I thought his comments were pretty strong, but hey, you like a little bit of fire and confidence out of a young rookie. Like, I don't mind him having a little bit of swag. Like I said, it didn't
blow you away.
It didn't blow me away. It didn't really move the needle for me. I don't hate it. I don't love it. You know?
And I guess that's I think why a lot of people, but certainly myself included, are frustrated is that it's been a while since the Warriors have made a draft pick where you're just happy with it, where it's not like a what? Like you're like there's a lot of head scratchers with these draft picks lately. And I do think he was one, especially given Cam Whitmore, who was projected to go in the top 10, was available at 19. I mean, this would have been a bigger player, regardless of who the player is. You're not playing them much in year one. So down the road, but look, Dunleavy reportedly had Podziemski number 11 on his draft board. So regardless of what would have happened, Podziemski was the pick. Whether you agree with the fact that he was so dead set on that, given that Cam Whitmore was not projected to slip that far down, remains to be seen. But here it is. Now, I was ready to give up on the Warriors yesterday. Because initially I was like, Chris Paul, Brandin Podziemski, but then at the end of the draft, they pull off a last minute trade where apparently you can still trade cash. I thought the new CBA prevented that, but maybe that's not taking effect until next year. I don't know. This whole thing's confusing, but they traded with the Washington Wizards, the same team they traded Jordan Poole to. They gave him cash for the 57th pick in the draft because of this kid, Trayce Jackson-Davis. Now I've a couple of friends who actually went to Indiana University who are junkies when it comes to college basketball, and they're Hoosiers. Months ago, I was hearing about Trayce Jackson-Davis. Months ago, I've been hearing about this guy for a long time. Jalen Hood-Schifino, for example, who was drafted ahead of him, also a player at Indiana. He's who I went with for the Locked On Warriors mock draft.
Yeah.
Was not like he didn't. Hood-Schifino did not excite my Hoosier friends the way Jackson-Davis did. He's Dale Davis's son. For anyone old enough to remember watching Dale Davis, that dude was a beast. of an NBA player. If his son has any of that progeny, that alone is huge. I'm stoked on it. Whether or not we see him this year, he is in terms of positions, a small ball 5, solid rebounder. He led the conference last year in block shots, if I'm not mistaken. So he plays defense. Tough-minded kid, got a chip on his shoulder, as evident by that tweet saying y'all are going to regret this because he kept falling down in the draft. So that was salvation, in my opinion, for the Golden State Warriors. This guy could be the next Draymond Green. He could also be the next Eric Paschall. Who knows? But what are your thoughts? I love it. What are your thoughts, Kylen, on Jackson-Davis, Trayce Jackson-Davis more specifically?
Trayce Jackson-Davis out of Indiana was a steal for the Warriors to get him at 47, late second round. Like, I think his skill set is much higher than that. His projections were higher. I mean, he fell much lower than he was expected to in the draft. So to me, that's a good pickup for the Warriors. I think it's an interesting trade-off. We've given up PBJ and bringing up Trayce Jackson-Davis, because that's one of kind of the first questions I asked myself is, well, what are they trading off? And obviously PBJ also is tall, but he's thin. He's not quite as developed. He's got that really smooth jumper, great looking shot. But I think that he also has some durability concerns, and PBJ needed more developing. To me, Trayce Jackson-Davis, because he did play 4 years at Indiana, he's a little bit older. He's a little bit more polished. He's just a player who's more NBA ready. He's really strong. He's athletic. He's got some moves, scores most of his points in the paint, is a high-level athlete. And I think he's a player who's just more ready than some of the rookies the Warriors brought in last year. I mean, and it's crazy looking at like Ryan Rollins in the second round compared to TJD. I just think that Trayce is much more ready to possibly be an impact or make an impact, to see some playing time. Now, I agree with what Dunleavy said, that I don't think you can ever expect a young player to come in and play right away, make an impact right away. But one thing that was reported in terms of Trayce Jackson-Davis dropping lower in the draft is that he was a player the Warriors were pursuing and were trying to get behind the scenes to fall farther in the draft and maybe making some calls. That's what was reported in The Athletic. And one thing that, at least it was said, drew Trayce Jackson-Davis to the Warriors was the fact that they were telling him, like, you're going to be on the 15-man roster and you're going to have a chance to compete. Not like guaranteeing him playing time or anything, but, you are going to have a chance to be in the mix, which isn't always the case for late second rounders. That's where that report came from, and me saying that earlier, that, supposedly there were comments. And I think Dunleavy did say at one point that, there's an opportunity for young guys to play in some way, shape, or form. But this is, I think, a good pickup. I like a lot about his game. I think it is a better fit for the Warriors compared to PBJ in terms of just NBA readiness, some of the size, athleticism, post presence. Trayce Jackson-Davis is a player with rim protector potential. Like I said, strong post game. And the Warriors are thin in the front court, flat out. So, would he be able to come in and play some minutes in the second unit right away? We'll have to see, but I'm excited to see the potential, because I do think he is a little bit more polished, and the Warriors can use some strength and size. I mean, there's no doubt about it.
Oh my God, yeah. I want to really quickly, before we finish up the show and talk about what's next for the Warriors, I want to play the soundbite from Jackson-Davis upon learning that 2 of his teammates are now following him on social media.
I haven't really. I saw that Steph followed me on Instagram, so that was really cool. But other than that, not really. But I can't wait to meet him, and can't wait to get started with the process.
Absolutely. And that's just the perk of being on the Golden State Warriors. Suddenly Stephen Curry is your teammate. I can't even imagine what that's about. Look, so the bottom line right now is with the draft over, with the Chris Paul trade, there's a lot still remaining. Like, this is far from the finished product that we're going to see next year, because if this in fact is the product, I mean, Draymond Green is not even signed yet. By the way, did you see what he wrote? He did. There was an Instagram story where a player from Michigan State posted. I don't know what it was, but he wrote on there that Draymond deserves $100 million, or if not more, easily. And Draymond added a comment to that with some like prayer symbols and fingers crossed. I mean, if he's looking for $100 million, I don't know. Did you get a chance to see that?
I'm making faces about that. Ooh.
Yeah. So, but the bottom line is, so here's what I'm hearing, and do not take this as fact. Do not aggregate this. This is purely speculative, but there is still a very strong possibility Jonathan Kuminga gets traded. I don't know how
Very
secure.
possible.
Yeah, very possible. I don't know how secure, in all honesty, Klay Thompson is. Maybe he's super secure. Maybe the team gets bold and includes him in a trade. I don't know. But there are moves that are still going to come down the pipe here. I have no idea what that move is. I don't know who they're looking for. In fact, I want to play one last soundbite. This was from Dunleavy Jr. again, and this was reassuring because until I heard this, I had heard that Dunleavy Jr. was actually not really going to emphasize size, and I was freaking out over that. But then I see this comment, and even though it's hard to trust Dunleavy Jr., given he also said Jordan Poole was going to be with the Warriors the next 4 years, here he is talking about the Warriors' need for size.
Free agency's coming quick. You guys are making pretty substantial changes to the roster, it seems. How do you just kind of view the to-do list over the next 14 days? Like, what's the priority?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're in a good spot with roster spots first and foremost. I think you always got to be mindful of those. And, maybe heading into this week, there was some concern about not enough or overloading. So I always want to have a few bullets in free agency. All we're going to be able to have is minimums. So we got to work with that. But, we're looking to add veteran players that can fit into our rotation. I think I mentioned the other day, shooting is always a premium. Two-way play, always a premium. And then, I think it's obvious that we need to add some size. So some size and skill, specifically shooting, I think would go a long way and complement our front court.
They need size desperately. Desperately. Yep. Kylen, you've been saying this for a long time, and I wholeheartedly agree with you. This team needs size. So there's still the moves that are going to be made. We just have to wait and see what those moves are. Any final thoughts, Kylen, as we wrap it up? Oh, real quick, do you want me to go to the starred chats, or do you want to give your final thoughts first? I don't care. But either way.
Final thoughts. We got to wrap it up here, Cy. My only thought is just that, there's a lot yet to be determined. We can talk about it Monday, but they're going to have to get moving in free agency because they do still need size. There's no questions there.
Absolutely. Real quick, Nick J writes in regard to spending cash for that and trading that for the 57th pick. Nick J writes that takes effect next year. But then why can't the Warriors spend the mid-level exception? That's where I'm a little confused here. So I don't know what takes effect next year, what takes effect this year. They haven't even released the CBA to teams yet, the official one. It's like it's going to be like a book. So that's the part that confuses me. Ray Lang writes, nobody's talking about Wiggins. I don't know what there is to say. I mean, we love him. He's expected to be the number 2 player on this team next year. If you want to add anything else,
being traded. If that's what you're saying, why aren't we talking about him? He's not on the block. No. Dude,
his salary is so friendly. He's arguably the second best player on this team.
Took a pay cut to sign with the Warriors, by the way.
What, say that again, I'm sorry.
He took a pay cut to sign with the Warriors.
Exactly. Jeff Porter writes, am I all right? Because I left Larry Kruger's show last night. I was just exhausted. He knew I had to leave early. Don't read anything into that. William Herr writes, how many roster spots do the Warriors have left? My math says 4. But again, not an important thing to focus on right now because players could still get traded. There's still a lot of moves to be made before we find. Is that correct, Kylen? I think it's 4. I don't know if you know more than me on that.
Yeah, I think so.
And then lastly, and then we're out of here. Niners Warriors. For those of you that thought that Jonathan Kuminga grew to 7 feet 2 inches, that was a joke.
Dude, Kendrick Perkins saying that on TV. I was dying.
So Jonathan Kuminga,
now that he grew to 7'2",
he did not grow 7'2". He might have grown like an inch. Maybe grew an inch. I don't know, but he did not grow anything substantially.
Late bloomer from 6 whatever he is to 7'2". Yeah, right. Over the summer, all over the summer, big growth spurt.
Have a great weekend, Kylen. Anything else? Are we good? We touched on everything.
No, gotta go.
All right. Thank you, everyone. We'll be back at this. If anything important happens, you'll get an emergency podcast. Otherwise, we're back at it Monday. And take care. Thanks, Kylen. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.